Hello, my name is Dave Shadovitz, editor of Human Resource Executive, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar on the power of stay interviews. Special thanks goes to Achievers for sponsoring today's webinar. Achievers' mission is to change the way the world works. Their employee success platform is specifically designed to drive higher levels of employee engagement. It's built to align everyone with business objectives and company values, driven by recognizing shared victories every day. It's designed to make success a way of life. Before I proceed, I'd like to just review a few housekeeping items. First, be sure to have the volume turned up on your computer to hear the audio for the webinar. If you have any problems hearing the audio through the computer, press the request button in the participants box on the top right corner of your screen to receive the teleconference instructions. To ask a question about the content of the presentation during the event, you may use the Q&A panel that's located on your screen. You can send questions to the presenter throughout the entire presentation, and then we'll be leaving time at the end to get to them. And within 48 hours, an archived version of the presentation will be available on the webinars page of our website, hrexecutive.com. Finally, if you encounter any technical problems during the webinar, feel free to contact WebEx Technical Support at 866-229-3239. And now on to today's presentation. Research shows that the top reason employees stay and engage in their work is because they trust their immediate supervisor. Yet leadership continues to work around supervisors with a one-size-fits-all employee program rather than through them with real solutions. One such solution is the stay interview, which today's presenter, Dick Finnegan, is a strong proponent of. In today's webinar, Dick will explore how employers can move the needle on engagement and retention through the use of stay interviews. Dick is CEO of C-Suite Analytics, which provides employee engagement and retention solutions. His experience includes solving turnover and engagement at Siberian banks, African gold mines, and the CIA, as well as a host of multinational corporations. Dick is the author of The Power of Stay Interviews for Engagement and Retention, Rethinking Retention in Good Times and Bad, and The Stay Interview, A Manager's Guide to Keeping the Best and the Brightest. Dick, thank you for joining us today, and please take it from here.
Thanks, Dave. Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Power of Stay Interviews, and I slipped in this subtitle, AKA Finnegan's Arrow. And I'm really eager to build on, Dave, a sentence you said, which is the number one reason employees stay or leave and they engage or disengage is how much they trust their boss. And that's a big sentence. And if you think, and I want you all, every one of you who's listening, to think about how you manage engagement and retention in your companies and how much energy you put into that versus what I always refer to, and you said it, Dave, the same way I say it, one-size-fits-all employee programs. That's what we're going to explore today, but we're not going to leave it at, hey, it's about bosses. We're going to talk about how you very specifically can cut employee turnover and improve employee engagement. So quick from me, Dave said most of the things you need to know. I've written a bunch of books, and I've had these experiences of working to cut turnover with the CIA and across China and in African gold mines, Siberia, all these things. The book you see second from the left, The Power of Stay Interviews, is the top-selling book in the history of SHRM. And, in fact, I just wrote the second edition of that book over the holidays. It'll be have its inaugural sale at, as I understand, at the SHRM conference in June in Chicago. So in the bottom of this, you see Business Week magazine likes us, says offers fresh thinking for solving the turnover problem in any economy. It's that fresh thinking we'll tackle today. One other place I want to put your eye on this slide, if you could back up to the upper right in that one of many yellow boxes, it says business driven. That's where we're going to spend our time today. So let's first of all talk about this stay interview idea, because Dave mentioned it, I'm mentioning it. We're going to get back to it in detail, but just so we all have the same baseline idea. Structured discussion a leader conducts with each individual employee to learn a specific action she must take to strengthen that employee's engagement and retention with the organization. So structured means 5 questions. I will show them to you. Leader means first-line leader. If the CEO has a team, the CEO becomes the first-line leader. First-line supervisors have a team, they're the first-line leader. If you're in HR, if you have HR people reporting to you, you're a first-line leader. But it doesn't mean anything else. It doesn't mean HR is responsible for retention or engagement. It doesn't mean if Billy Bob is too busy, HR comes in and does the stay interviews, or Susan over here can't build trust, so somebody else has to sit in for Susan. No. Got to be done by bosses. It's a critical thing. And what's good about it, it says on the bottom, brings information that can be used today. When you have these structured discussions first, they become unstructured discussions after that, and you're communicating with people on your team. Second, they focus on individual employees, including top performers. The opposite of this is an employee survey that takes data from everybody and assumes each person should have an equal weight. Some people outperform others by 4 to 1. We better know what they want. And third, puts managers in the solution seat, because I'm going to convince you, and I'm going to give you tools to convince your executives. That's where the action has to be. It's not that it should be in HR. In fact, my background is I'm a recovering HR director, and what I mean by that was I was once the HR executive for a large chunk of a big banking company. The CEO came to me, actually he told me to come to him in his office, and said, turnover's high, go fix it. We disagreed to a point where we argued, because I said, which leaders have high turnover. It's not about pay. It's never about benefits, I'll tell you that. It is not about those things. And you won't act on it. No, you're in charge of people, so back and forth, back and forth. So I lost the argument, of course, and 2 days later, asked the head of the head of the branches of the bank, in other words, really the COO, that's where all the people were, to have lunch with me. We had lunch together. I said, will you agree to hold branch managers accountable for retention? He said, yes. I gave him the data. We built the report. We had meetings. We told them. 4 months later, turnover was down 19%. We had saved over $4 million, and CEO gave me an award. All I did was buy somebody lunch, but move the accountability from HR to managers. So, boy, maybe that's worth the time of this meeting, is just to think of it that way, moving responsibility to where it needs to be, and I'm going to show you why. So, given all that, let me show you some data. We're data hogs. We love data. We study data all the time. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say this. I'm going to show you at the end cutting turnover 67, 70, and 50% in 3 different industries, how we did it, building on everything I tell you today. So that's pretty rich. So data. Here you see 2009 through 2017. This is voluntary quits from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. All-time high. Bingo, right there. Young U.S. workers will hold 10 to 14 jobs by age 38. We've got a big audience, big national audience today. Guarantee you somebody out there is 38. I'll still like you after I say this, and I hope you like me. 38 isn't young. It's just not. People are going wild, changing jobs in the middle age. Why are they doing it? Well, lots of reasons, right? We got lots of jobs. Unemployment's low at 4.1%. Now there's 3 things happening in Washington that are going to make this worse and not better. One is the tax law makes companies flush with money that they can spend on more jobs if they choose to. Some won't, but some will. Second, if they do the infrastructure bill and build better roads, airports, and highways, anybody who does manual labor can get a big raise. That's going to create havoc. Third, we're arresting people and sending them back to their country from jobs. So we're reducing the workforce instead of adding to it. So there's no sign this bad scene is going to get better. In fact, and I mean literally 100% of every CEO survey, when they say, what's your biggest obstacle, they say either can't find people, can't retain people, can't engage people, nothing about anything but people. So we need new solutions, which I'm going to give you that work. Okay, so let's go from here, and I want to show you different data. Now, you've probably never seen this slide because we took data from a Gallup over 17 years and built it. So if you put your eye bottom left, it says 2000, run your eye north to 2016. That 17 data will come out very soon from Gallup. And here's what you have. Green means good. These people are engaged. The brown section in the middle, the big section, is people who are not engaged, not kind of, sort of, not engaged. The orange are people who are actively disengaged. Gallup has clever nicknames. For the middle group, they say they are sleepwalking. For the right group, they say they are, ready for this, sabotaging. So you got sleepwalkers, sabotagers, and people we want to keep. What's key about this, obviously, nothing changes. Nothing. Nothing changes on engagement, whereas bottom right on this slide from Deloitte, they say we spend $1.53 billion, with a B, dollars a year to fix engagement. We flush $1.5 billion. The study didn't say where does the money go, but I'm going to tell you where I think the top 4 places are. Engagement surveys, exit surveys, more engagement surveys, more exit surveys. We are convinced that if we keep doing surveys, we will get results. We'll compare them to worthless benchmarks. Worthless. Worthless. We compare, if we get a 60 on engagement and the benchmark's 59, we want a high 5. We are one hair better than mediocre. We're comparing ourselves to people who don't know what they're doing because nobody can make this any better. Turnover is 25%. The benchmark is 26. We're high-fiving. That just means that we are one hair better than mediocre. Nobody has figured out how to cut turnover and how to improve engagement. Nobody has figured it out. There are a couple companies, they can kind of light a candle and say, we did this one thing, it seemed to work. But all the processes in place that everybody uses, engagement surveys, exit surveys, don't work. The reason they don't work is because of what Dave said in the beginning, that, think of it this way, and you all live this life. You do an employee engagement survey, you get the results. It says everybody wants more recognition. Okay, easy. Employee of the month, employee of the year, employee appreciation week. Everybody wants more communication. Easy. Town hall meetings, newsletters, CEO videos, suggestion boxes. All those things have less than a 24-hour shelf life because when people leave those things, they have to go back to work. And when they go back to work, they got to deal with jobs, colleagues, duties, jobs, colleagues, duties, jobs, colleagues, duties. That's where the action is. It's not events with food. The joke line is to say, when's the last time you heard a really good worker say, my boss treats me like dirt, but I am holding on for Employee Appreciation Week. Maybe this year they'll have a dunk tank. It's just not the way it works. It's just not. So, makes us sad, right? So let me show you this thing called Finnegan's Arrow. It's obviously named after me. It embarrasses me, but our marketing people said my name is so associated with all these subjects on the web, and that's how you market. I figure maybe all of you know of Finnegan's Pub, and you'll remember I collect the T-shirts myself. So dollars, goals, standard views, forecast, accountability, that is the prescription. I'm going to explain to you each of these, but that's the prescription because your executives have to know, and I'm going to focus on turnover, but I could talk about engagement too. They have to know the cost of turnover. They have to know it's not rush hour traffic. We can't do anything about it. They have to know it's not something that we just look past. It's either your biggest cost or your biggest cost after the cost of goods that you sell. No question. It is your biggest cost. And finance people fall asleep on this. They think HR is in charge of it. If CFOs, Chief Financial Officers, learned the cost of turnover in CFO school, wherever they went to CFO school, whatever they went to, they would be all over this. But they're not because they don't get it. And we need to get them to get it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about dollars. Then goals. You've got to have goals for retention. 2 goals, all turnover, new hire turnover, because you got to nip new hire turnover in the bud. You've got to have a goal for everybody who manages people, not HR. Go fix it. Those days have to crash to an end. Standard views are the keystone. They sit in the middle. And Dave, I know you're in Philadelphia. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, so we know that Pennsylvania is the keystone state. It sits in the middle. And it sits in the middle because it's got to be surrounded by business-driven processes. If you leave this meeting and say to your executives, great idea, standard views, we're all going to do them, people aren't going to do them. They have to believe they have value, and they have to believe they have to do them. So dollars will drive your executives to understand why they need to set retention goals. Retention goals will drive your leaders to do stay interviews and do them effectively, and then they're going to forecast how long each employee will stay, and they're going to be accountable for achieving their goals and the accuracy of their forecast. That's the business-driven model. Now, we built this over many, many years with hundreds of clients, but once we built it, it's not like we came in one morning and worked on a flip chart, but once we built it, a couple months later, we looked and we said, this is precisely how companies manage sales, right? Salespeople know the dollar value of every sale for their wallet, and CEOs know it for the company. Salespeople have goals. Salespeople have tools. Our tool is stay interviews. Salespeople forecast their sales. They are accountable for achieving their goals and the accuracy of their forecast. This is business-driven. This is what Business Week magazine likes so much. Now, let's play. So turnover in terms of dollars. These are actual client costs. Lose a physician in Ohio, $225,808. Software engineer in Colorado, $131. Call center rep in Philadelphia, by the way, $29,447. Truckloader unloader, truckloader unloader was in Philadelphia. Dave, for you, $49.55. Call center rep, $29 and change. That was in Indiana. So we've done hundreds of these studies for companies. We can tell them what it costs. The software engineer study was remarkable. It was in Colorado, Broomfield, if you know where that is, north of Denver, with a software company. The CFO, head of HR, and I worked on that cost study. When we sat with the CEO, put up that slide, the CEO said, you don't have to tell me anything else, because now I know that if I can solve turnover of software engineers, we will make our annual revenue goal. Immediately connected the dots. So think about, for you, how much does it cost to lose a top performer? When we end today, I'm going to make some free offers to you, and one is going to be a white paper on how do you cost turnover, and also how do you put dollar costs on employee engagement. So let's talk about goals. So think about this. Here's the big one, right? Do you solve retention or engagement with accountabilities or programs? So what does that mean? It means everything in your organization that's important is solved with accountabilities. If it's not important, it's solved with a program. Employee Appreciation Week, Employee of the Month, newsletters, all those things. Now, you know your CEO will drive down goals. There are reports with people's names on them that you've got to achieve something monthly, weekly, daily, sometimes inside of a day, right? Inside of a day. There are achievements you have to do, and there are reports floating around about it. Executives sit around Monday morning. They talk about who's achieving, who's not. But retention and engagement have been relegated on the right side. You see that 86%. That's from a study that I think, based on the way they did the study, it's even higher than engagement and retention in companies is done by programs more than 86% of the time. So ask yourself, which side are you on? If you say, well, we're on the accountability side because we set a goal for retention, I tell you it only matters if it's down to first-line leaders, because I'm going to prove to you that's where the action is. So let me start proving. So supervisors' impact on engagement and retention, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 studies I put on this slide. I could put 35. If you have a turnover problem, Gallup says in their great book, First Break All the Rules, with first-year managers looking at over 1 million pieces of data. Start with bosses. That's where turnover happens. Employees stay from managers first, coworkers second. Think about what isn't there. Not pay, not benefits, not employee appreciation week. Managers first, coworkers second. Retention is boss colleagues' duties, boss colleagues' duties, boss colleagues' duties. Employees' levels of engagement are up if the supervisor is up, down if the supervisor is down. Exact mirror based on the data. When employees stay, it's because they're immediate managers, because of their immediate managers. Now, what's critical here is National Education Association. This is about teachers. The NEA says if you want to solve teacher turnover, hold principals accountable for retention. We work with school districts. How do we do it? Goals, dollars, goals, stay interviews, forecast, accountability. Same as the model. I know, so think about this. If you have a teacher in your family, you know what's common about teacher turnover. What do you hear on the street? You hear low pay, no career, kids have runny noses, parents can be jerks. My darling daughter is a teacher. I hear about this twice a week, but I also hear how long she'll stay depends on her relationship with the nun who's the principal. I know this is true. She knows it's true. Now, the bottom changes the game. Employees who stay primarily for their supervisors, not pay, not benefits, not anything else. I stay for you. Stay longer, which improves retention, perform better, which improves engagement, or even more satisfied with their pay. Now, leap over here because Connexa, a global consulting firm, interviewed 1,000 people who recently quit. Now, 1,000's a big number, right? They did 1,000 because it was all industries, all levels. They wanted no pushback on, is this about us? Asked 5 questions: pay, benefits, development, advancement, relationship with your boss. Got the straight flush. The more you liked your boss, the more you liked your pay, benefits, development, advancement. If you thought your boss was a jerk, you didn't like your pay or your benefits or your development or your advancement. They concluded, which you see on the screen, offering a higher salary or developmental/opportunity may not be enough to retain employees. To me, that's not only true, but it's kind of soft talk. Because I would say it this way: the prism or the lens through which employees see their supervisor is the way they see the company. So if you think about Glassdoor, right? You look at Glassdoor, and employees input data for current or past companies, and they answer, how was your pay? How's your benefits? How'd you like the CEO is one of the questions. How'd you like your supervisor? You know what? You just need one question. Because if you work in a big company, either draw the long straw and get a good boss who you trust, and you love the company, or you get the short straw and you get a jerk boss, and you don't love the company. It's really not more complicated than that. So remember this, right? Green is good, orange is very bad, and we can't figure out a way to change the distribution of the colors. Now, I remind you of this again because I want to show you this remarkable data from Gallup. So as you look at this slide, put your eye on top, the part where I put the yellow background. My manager and I have one of the strongest personal relationships in my life. Now, wouldn't you have liked to have been a fly on the wall when Gallup researchers sat around a table to debate whether to say strongest personal relationship in my life? My life. I mean, that is as extreme as you can get, right? So they surveyed employees on their relationships with their boss, but they already had data about their levels of engagement. So this is intriguing because on the right you have the engaged. So if I go backwards, let me go backwards. So on the right are the greens this time, and the oranges are on the left. So these are the good ones. These are the sabotagers you would fire in a heartbeat. So my manager and I have one of the strongest personal relationships in my life on a 5-point scale. For the engaged, the people we want to keep, 16% scored at a 5, 16 a 4, 33 a 3. So 65% scored this a 3 or higher. Look here, the sabotagers, 80% scored at a 1, 12% scored at a 2. So virtually everybody said, I hate my boss, and I sabotage this company. So what does it tell you, right? That all the things we do to improve engagement, all the one-size-fits-all programs just don't work, and that's why we're in this mess. That's exactly why we're in this mess. So I want to talk to you about trust. I said in the beginning, it's the biggest deal of all. I'm going to prove to you it's the biggest deal of all. I could prove it to you with several sets of data. I chose one to use today. Let me show you what it is. You'll find this fascinating. So I want you to think about exactly what you see, your best boss and your worst boss. And my favorite worst boss is the guy on the bottom left from Office Space, right? My favorite worst boss, Lundberg. But as you think about your best boss and worst boss, I would bet you $20 these two sentences I'm going to say are true, that you trusted your best boss and distrusted your worst boss. But secondly, your best boss had shortcomings. Your best boss couldn't do something well, couldn't spell, couldn't show up on time, couldn't match his or her clothes, needed mouthwash. I don't know what. They weren't perfect. But it didn't matter because they had crossed the Matterhorn. They had crossed the picket fence. They were in a place with you where you trusted them. And when you trust people, You are so tolerant and forgiving. But your worst boss had strengths. He or she had things they did well, but you were blindfolded to those strengths because you didn't trust them. You can't. Once somebody breaks trust, it's really hard to move forward. In fact, I'm a therapist by training, and I can tell you, after all that work, here's the simple conclusion I reached, that human relationships spin primarily on just two variables, trust and self-esteem. You stick with people who are looking out for you, and you stick with people who make you feel good about being you. That is the deal. That is the deal. And when trust breaks, what happens? Neighbors put up high fences, couples break up, divorces happen, relatives stop talking to each other, people quit jobs, or they disengage and slow down. Big deal. So let me move on to some data. I want to tell you about Google, that Google is the best place to work according to the Fortune Top 100. They've been number one from 2012 to 2017. I expect they'll soon be announced any day for 2018. And why are they so good? Well, gosh, read the slide. Baby bonding bucks, 12 weeks paid parental leave, horseshoe pits, Africa volunteering, subsidized massages, 3 wellness centers, bike repair shop. It only comes twice a week, by the way. 3 organic meals a day, artisan tea and coffee. I don't know what that is. 25 free cafeterias, free eyebrow shaping, which is fun to make fun of. But if you look at the picture, you see this blonde woman, and I would bet you $100 she's an actress. They had 3 banks of lights to get the perfect shot. They've got her arms. It's a little hard to see on this little picture, but they've just got her arms wide, big smiling grin with white teeth, blonde hair flowing, probably had a fan, got her right at the elbow of the slide. And if we were in a room where I speak at many conferences and executive sessions, I would say, raise your hand if you work in a building with more than 1 floor. Most of you would raise your hands, and I'd say, where's your slide? Because the clear implication is, if you want to have a great employer, if you want to be Google, you need to have slides. Well, this is all BS, and I'm going to show you why I say that, because every year I read this, I do the fold-outs of the top 100 companies, all the things they give away, the special input, the special notations they have. They can do. You can get 1 or more of 4. Let me think what they are. Turnover below 5%, pay in the top 5%. Domestic partner benefits, or have a fitness center. You can get a special little icon. But you get to the end of the special section in the smallest imaginable font, and you read what you see here. 2/3 of a company's score is based on the results of the Great Place to Work's Trust Index survey. You then Google, and you go to the Great Place to Work Institute, and you see any company can be a great place to work. Our approach is based on the major findings of 20 years of research. The trust between managers and employees is the primary defining characteristic of the very best workplaces. Note what it doesn't say. It doesn't say trust between executives and employees, companies and employees. It says managers and employees. Now, let's put on hold for a minute that Fortune misleads us, because they do. I want to show you the next slide. You're going to see a chart here with numbers, and here's what the Great Place to Work Institute did. They said, okay, if trust is the big deal because it's 2/3 of the score, then let's look at companies that make the list who are publicly traded, because we know their shareholder returns against the marketplace. If you make the list, bingo, you pay your shareholders 366% more than the companies that don't make the list. Excuse me. And all you can conclude is making this list, which you make by building trust, builds profits. Building trust builds profits. Now, backstory here, that I've been reporting this data for some time. I did a presentation to a big audience, I think it was in San Francisco, and a woman marched up afterwards and literally slammed down her business card. She was angry. She said, I'm with the Great Place to Work Institute. You have to stop showing these slides. I said, I'm so glad I have your card. I have your email address. I'll send you the slides. You walk them to your CEO or send them to your CEO. Ask your CEO to contact me if they're incorrect. I never heard back. I have written in books that Fortune lies to people because they lie. Think about it. Let's go backwards. Think about it. They will tell you all this about Google, all the things they give away, and that's all they'll tell you. The fact is Google must have great bosses who build trust because they're number one every year. And recently, Fortune announced they're going to change the way they do the measurement, and they're going to use 4 criteria. They didn't announce the weighting of them, and I don't think they will. But my battle with them is over. But more importantly, they proved trust builds profits, trust between managers and employees. So let's go from here. And I want to tell you the big lesson from the fuzzy-haired guy. It's not what you give them, it's how you treat them. It is not what you give them. It is how you treat them. First-line supervisors have most influence over what? What I keep saying. Bosses, colleagues, duties, bosses, colleagues, duties, bosses, colleagues, duties. But, you know, we all know this definition of insanity. We keep doing the same thing because everybody keeps doing the same thing. There is no reason for vendors to sell you something new because we keep buying the same bad stuff. So let's talk about stay interviews. Definition, you know it, right? You know it. One-on-one meetings. Seems too simple. Key process ingredients, always by supervisors, never by HR. Separate from performance review. I want to have a meeting with you to learn what I can do to make working here better for you. That's it. Once a year for existing employees, twice a year for new hires. Remember, we set new hire goals, twice a year for new hires. Create individual stay action plans. Managers then forecast retention. So let me show you next the 5 questions and why. These are the questions. They're all you need. There are a ton of blogs and other books now after I wrote the book saying, here's 30 questions, pick 6. Nope, this is it. What do you look forward to each day when you commute to work? I want you to get your head into your day-to-day duties and tell me what you like to do. Number 2, what are you learning here and what do you want to learn? Yes, we'll talk about what learning. We'll talk about careers because we train managers on how to deal with those questions. Number 3, why do you stay here? Now, if I know why you stay, and if I know your answer to number 1, what you look forward to, I can think about how can I add something to your job that fits your sweet spot that you really like to do? How can I change your job just 5 degrees to make it better for you? So, for example, you might say, you know why I like coming to work? Because I like to organize things. You know why I stay here? Because this place is a mess, but by 5 o'clock when I leave, it's pretty. You like to organize? Yeah, you should see my shoe closet. Great. Next month when we have a staff meeting, can you teach people how to organize? Because not everybody can. You'd let me do that? You damn straight I'll let you do that. Now, why do you stay here looks like the most innocent question. It's the money question because when you say to somebody, why do you stay here, they're going to say, well, I got to pay the bills. And at that point, we train leaders to say, I got to pay the bills too, but I've thought about it. I stay for bigger things. What are the bigger things you stay for? I don't know. Well, I want you to think about it. Can I get you a cup of coffee? Because I'm not going to give you any hints. I'm not going to make this multiple choice. I'm not going to say, is it for your colleagues? Yeah, it's good. Okay, let's move on. No, you're going to discover why you stay here. And you're going to discover it because I'm a therapist by training, and I know, how does therapy work? Therapy is getting patients to identify subconscious beliefs they have, they don't know they have, that drive them to make decisions that make themselves unhappy. That's what it is. So a therapist will say, ask a question, you give an answer, they'll tell you what you said. They'll ask another question, you give an answer, they'll tell you what you said. They'll ask another question, you give an answer, they'll tell you what you said. And finally, they'll ask a question, you give an answer, and you'll say, I can't believe I said that. And they'll say it again. I want you to hear it. We want people to discover why they stay, and we want them to announce it out loud, and we want to say it back to them. We want them to never forget why they stay, because few people know. But once I know the answer to 3 and number 1, I can start thinking about how do I make work better for you. Number 4, when's the last time you thought about leaving us? What prompted it? I want to know on a 1 to 10 scale, how important is it to you? What's the number 1 thing I can do to make it better? Number 5, what can I do to make work better for you? Am I with you too much or too little? Do I tell you when you do things well or only when you do things wrongly? Do I need mouthwash? You tell me. What do I need to do? It's like if you live near a mall that has a Build-A-Bear workshop, it's Build-A-Boss. You tell me how I can be better. When you are trained to ask these questions, take notes, probe and probe. Tell me more. Give me an example. Help me understand. And either in that meeting or a couple of days later, you come back and say, I've got 3 ideas for you that I think can make working here better for you. You win and they win and you build trust. This is the trust-building method. It's not a class on how to build trust. It's a process to immediately put in place that builds trust, solves retention, solves engagement. So forecasting, what I always call the lockdown tool. So let's have what I call a John Lennon moment, that now in your company, you've got dollars solved, you've got goals solved, you've got a goal for, and I'll just focus on retention instead of engagement for today. Every leader has a turnover goal, and every leader has a new hire turnover goal. And new hire means if you can nip new hire turnover, you win. Your data will tell you that there's a cliff, there's a tipping point, that if they stay 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, they tend to stay much longer. You've got to get people through that tipping point. So you've got to have new hire goals for each leader, reports for leaders with 2 goals, dollar costs for turnover. Now you're humming. Now you're business driven. Now you're going to forecast how long people will stay. And the forecasting method is wonderfully simplistic. So how does it work? Traffic light. Red means I think this person will be gone in 6 months or less based on their choice or ours. Yellow, 6 to 12 months. Green, I think he or she will be here in a year. I think I've got it. I think they'll be here in a year. It's a different methodology for engagement. This is the retention methodology. And you can change this anytime you want. Do it after your first day interview. Change it anytime you want. I just grabbed a drink. Excuse me if you heard me gulp. So let me give you an example of this. So retention forecast, heat map, the name given to it by one of our clients, EA Sports, that studies this report religiously. So upper left, you have Rodriguez, who's the manager for this unit with 4 direct reports. Import performance ratings, if you have them, they're not perfect, but they're worth something. And so 5 is high in our example, 1 is low. Then you've got green or yellow or red in retention plan. So after the first day interview, for Kim Johnson, who's a 4, she's pretty good. We're going to give Kim a mentor. We've structured a mentoring program for somebody so she can learn about something new. She's going to meet with this person twice a week for an hour for 3 weeks. They're going to report to me. So a structured mentoring program to learn something. She's green. I think she'll be here in a year. Bert Brown's our top performer at a 5. Bert's red. Because Bert said, headhunters call me. They want to make me a manager. If you're not going to make me a manager, I'm going to take one of these calls. So we're coaching Bert to be a manager, but the fact is we don't think he's got it. We don't think he can build trust and lead a team. We wish he wasn't so ambitious. We wish he didn't want to be a manager, but he wants to be, and if he continues to think so, we're probably going to give him feedback. It's not going to work. He's probably going to leave. If we can make him less ambitious or focus on the skills where he is best, we will do it. But our best forecast at this point is he'll be gone in 6 months. And if I were Rodriguez, the manager, I'd be going to my manager to say, you know, Bert's the top performer here. Here's my plan. You got a better idea, you tell me. Cindy Stone's a medium performer. She's pleased with current role and circumstance. She's green. Ralph Jimenez is a substandard performer. He's a 2. So he is 6 to 12 months. He goes to red if he doesn't get better. He goes to green if 2 things happen. He performs better. And we think he wants to stay. Imagine, again, your executives having this report for everybody in the organization. It is not scientifically right. It is what managers think, and they'll be held accountable to it, not because it's got to be perfect. Somebody's going to quit, say, my mom has cancer, I'm moving back home, nothing you can do. But the focus is, do we have greens where we want them? If we have yellows and reds for high performers, let's get together. Let's talk about what we have to do. Any manager who has all greens but has high turnover is sending you a signal they don't know they're sending you, which is their people don't trust them because their people are saying, everything's cool, I love to work with you, but you know what? I'm looking for a job. So let's go from here, and I want to give you examples, as I told you I would give you, of 3 companies that have done just what I've shown you today, and I'll give you a little bit of background about each of them. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I skipped accountability. So you see the arrows for accountability go back to goals and back to forecasts. So if you work in healthcare, high turnover for nurses all the time. So 7 hospitals owned by the same company, true story, 6 of them did strategy A. solved, in quotes, nurse turnover because they said, we've done all these surveys. Our employees want on-site child care and flexible scheduling. We'll spend the time, money, energy to do it. Versus strategy B, outlier hospital that said, all we're going to do is hold managers of nurses accountable. There's a report every month with your name against 2 turnover goals. We expect you to make your goals. If yesterday I had said to you, which do you think would be more effective, you would say strategy A. Now you might say strategy B. Here's the outcome on the bottom. The A group, no change a year later. The B, one hospital, turnover down 41%, saved millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. Think about what this means, that if your company says engagement is really important, but you don't have a goal, what's your goal? Beat the benchmark, do better than last year, that's no goal. What's your goal for turnover? We really don't have a goal. It's not important. If your executives won't set a goal for something, they're really not behind it. So, 3 studies. Some of you might know in Indiana, if you go to Elkhart, Indiana, how do you get there? Land at South Bend where Notre Dame is, go 15 miles east on Interstate 90. It is the home of, anybody know? Picture here, hint, recreational vehicles. 85% of the RVs in the United States are made in Elkhart, Indiana. Unbelievable. There are many factories among the trees. We've been asked to work with the biggest one. Great talent shortage there. Initial turnover over 100%. It is hands-on manufacturing. I have been there. It is not robots. It is people on their knees with tool belts, putting in pipes, putting in electrical wires. We taught the leaders to do stay interviews. They learned employees' one-on-one needs. They had retention goals, retention accountability reports with their names on it, distributed monthly. 5 months later, turnover cut by 2/3. Did just what I've told you today. Here's a second one. In Florida, there's a town named Zephyr Hills. You know it maybe from the water, Zephyr Hills water. It's about 35 miles east of Tampa. It's a little clumsy for a commute to Tampa, but if you really want to make money, drive to the big city. So the demand for nurses is really high. The CNO was challenged by the CEO to retain more nurses. The nurse managers were trained to conduct stay interviews. They accepted retention goals. The CEO met every month with the CNO, Chief Nursing Officer, and her direct reports to go through report against goals. Hey, 6 months later, turnover down 70%. And the last one I know is Hilton's call centers. This has been written about a lot in books and on websites and things, so I can say their name. 5 domestic call centers. They had 50% 90-day turnover. Half the people they hired, not unusual in call centers, didn't get to 90 days. They had to pay for 4 weeks of training with no ROI on that money, and many call center companies pay for more than 4 weeks of training. CEO told the center managers, the 5 of them, to accept a goal to retain 75% after 90 days, cut the bleeding in half. Recruiters and trainers had the same goal. It's kind of like supply chain management. Anybody who touches a new hire needs to have the new hire goal. Managers top to bottom conducted stay interviews. We did 91-day meetings to increase accountability. That means, since the goal is for 90 days, and they hire in classes of 20, in 91 days from the first day, there's a meeting in the director's office with those 20 names with lines through the ones who are not there in 90 days, and anybody who touched them is going to sit in that room, and they're going to debate and maybe even argue about why they lost 5, and hopefully no more than 5, because 5 out of 20 is 25%, which leaves 75%. Turnover cut in half in 4 months. So this stuff works. It's new, right? It's fresh thinking. It's a different way to look at retention or engagement. So I'm going to do a little quiz, and then Dave, I'm going to kick it back to you for questions. So here's the quiz. I have a great interest in the subject of happiness, real happiness, sustained happiness over the course of your life. And Gallup does too. And Gallup is doing what they call the World Poll, where they're surveying citizens in over 160 nations each year for 100 years. And one of the questions is, what is it that is the greatest driver of your happiness? So when I first learned about this, I thought, I can't wait to learn the answer, except I'll be dead. I probably will not live another 100 years. But then I read a book by Jim Clifton, which I read a lot by Jim. He's the CEO of Gallup. I figure he's the smartest person on earth. And he talked about this, and he gave the answer. So the answer is on your screen. There's 5 answers there. I invented 4 of them, and 1 is the right answer. So, excuse me, you can see the answers are good health, good job, love and respect from others, money for needs and more, better life for your children. And to put this into perspective, to put happiness into perspective, what is happiness? Well, I studied, years ago, I studied Abe Lincoln, like I wanted to make him my friend. And I studied a lot. I went to Springfield. If you've never been to Springfield, go. The museum is, I live in Orlando. Don't go to Disney World, go to Springfield. The museum is fabulous. I saw Lincoln's office. I walked through his home. I saw his furniture. I saw his bed. I saw pictures of him with his children. I went to his gravesite. And I learned a lot of things. Here's the main thing I learned. He was clinically depressed. So he's on the penny, and he's on Mount Rushmore. Bad news is he lived a life of misery. He shielded his depression with his wit and intelligence. You know, in addition, he married a woman who ended up in an asylum. He watched 2 of his children die in his arms. He saw 10 to 15,000 soldiers dead or dying. He died, but he didn't know that, of course. So it's not about fame. It's about happiness. So I'm going to count to 5. I want all of you to make a choice. Then I'm going to tell you the right answer. Good health, good job, love and respect from others, money for needs and more, better life for your children. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's the right answer. There's the right answer. There's the book. Jim said this is remarkable. This is a major change in the way the world thinks, that we're building our lives around our jobs. And at first you say, you got to be kidding, because few people get it right. Maybe some of you did, but few do. But the reality is that having a good job, builds your self-esteem, makes you feel good about your life, makes all the parts of your life better. And we end up here because this is our job, is to create good jobs, right? It's our job. But we've done a lousy job creating good jobs, which is why we can't budge engagement, we can't solve turnover, because we're not dealing with employees where they are, and it is stay interviews and the surrounding business-driven tools that really do that. So I want to flip up this on the screen. I want to point out my email address. You see it right here, D. Finnegan, in the middle in the blue, at c-suiteanalytics.com. If you email me, and you must tell me your number of employees, if you email me, I will send you a free online stay interview training module, online training for stay interviews for free. How to cost turnover and engagement, I mentioned that earlier. If you're interested in walking to your CFO, engagement correlations of productivity, training game for stay interviews, all those things are there for free for you. I welcome you to do it. Also, if you seek a keynote speaker for your organization or for your SHRM or other association, it's what I do the most, and it's what I love to do, and I'd be glad to hear from you. So, Dave, let me kick it to you, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dick. Let's use the remaining time then for some questions we received. Maybe let's start with this question, Dick. Somebody wants to know, won't setting employee retention goals cause managers to hold back on firing people? Do you have any thoughts on that?
This comes up a lot, and logically, you would think the answer is yes. It turns out the answer is not so much. Not so much. In fact, what tends to happen is leaders know if they keep poor performers, they'll lose good performers, and we really coach them on that too. So the outcome is that rarely do we find that we have this problem, even though logically you would think we do.
Dick, you still there?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to another one. How frequently should managers have stay conversations? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. At least 2 times with new hires in that tipping point period. So if your new hire goal is to get people to 60 days, then we would say have a stay interview at 3 weeks and 6 weeks. Don't wait until 2 months, maybe 3 weeks and 6 weeks, but 2 times in that period. If you put employees into training with trainers for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Let the trainers do the first one because they should have that new hire goal just as recruiters should. Supply chain, anybody who touches them owns that goal.
Okay, there's a question here about, how do you suggest the stay interview training be addressed most effectively? And you kind of touched on this a little bit, but do you have other suggestions on that, Dick?
Yeah, I do. The free online module will help you do that. But think about the skills they have to do stay interviews. First of all, they have to know they have accountability, right? They've got to know the cost and know they have an accountability. Here's the report you're going to see. But then they've got to learn 5 questions. They've got to be drilled and drilled and drilled on how to probe. Tell me more. Help me understand. Give me an example. You have to become great probers. And when we do training for companies, which we do all the time, we have exercises we use to make sure that they learn to probe. They've got to take notes. They've got to be able to synthesize, to integrate what they're hearing. So at the end of the meeting, or they come back a couple of days later and say, got a couple ideas. Tell me about these ideas. I think I can make work better for you. So they've got to be good listeners. They've got to be good note takers. They've got to be good probers. The other skill we find is they can't throw the company under the bus. If somebody says, pay sucks here, you can't say, well, I can't do anything about that. Tell me more. Help me understand. Help me understand why you think that. I'll be glad to listen to why you think about that. But the listening and taking notes and probing is better than blaming.
Okay, here's a question. We oftentimes will get a budget question. It says, we work at a public university. We hope to pilot a stay interview initiative to our departments at some point in the next year or two. So 2 questions related to that. If our departments are already tight on budgets and staffing, what can frontline managers offer as solutions to keep employees engaged? We can't pay for rewards. You want me to stop there, or you want the second part of the question, second question?
Give me the whole thing.
Okay, so then the next part is, considering how little departments have to answer central HR, what carrots and sticks can we use to keep frontline managers accountable for the turnover?
Yep. Well, yeah, let's do them 1 and 2. So first of all, you don't need a big budget to do stay interviews. I mean, the implication is in order to do them, we're going to have to spend money on solutions. I will tell you, least likely is people will ask for raises. Most likely is they will ask for better work processes. Why do I do this report? Nobody reads it. Can you get this department or this individual to do their work on time because they impact me? Can we talk about equipment? We got this broken equipment. Can we fix it? The main thing they're going to tell you about is here's what you can do to make me more effective. Over and over when we study our clients, that's what they talk about. They don't, you're going to get every kind of request, but you're not going to get a lot of requests that literally cost cash. Now, in terms of carrots and sticks, here's what I find. When you put this process into place, you're going to know that 5% or so, a small percent of your leaders cannot meet their retention goals. Or, as I keep saying, there's another way we do engagement. They're not going to be able to make their goals. They're not going to make accurate forecasts. If you're in HR, which our listeners are, that's not going to surprise you. You already know who those people are. And so your leaders are going to have to decide, we now know that turnover for this job costs us $2.4 million a year. We want to tolerate this supervisor or this manager who can't get this right. This is the exposing of it. So it's not like you need money to solve problems for individuals or to reinforce to managers. It's not a money thing. It's just a management thing. It's about accountability. It's interesting. We decided when we came back for the new year that we do work with a lot of companies to help them implement not just stay interviews, but all 5 pieces of Finnegan's Arrow. And we have major contracts with big companies, little companies, and we are great at slashing their turnover. You saw the 3 examples I gave. But we decided after the holidays, we're going to make sure any client going forward works with us for 6 months. The first 2 months might be intense. The 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th might be 1 call a month where we share data, and they're going to show us the greens, yellows, and reds. They're going to show us their performance against goals by manager, because if they can't hold people accountable, we'll hold them accountable, because with accountability comes success.
Okay, so kind of in tying to the case studies that you gave, someone had asked a question about executive leadership that gave managers retention goals, and they wanted to know what happened to those managers that didn't maintain or exceed their goals. Is that the extent of the response? Could you clarify a little bit about the steps that were taken?
Yeah. One example flies into my mind of a manager who got fired because they couldn't make their goals. And it frankly wasn't even goals. It was once we laid this program out, and employees started saying, "You're kidding me. You expect me to work?" And it was a manager of nursing. "You expect me to work for her?" And that person got fired. I can't think of anybody else who's gotten fired. There might be, because we deal with a lot of clients. That one comes to mind. But it's more like the managers get it. Once you tell them the cost of turnover, and once you tell them they have retention goals, a couple are going to say, "Oh, another thing we got to do." There's going to be a little bit of moaning, but not a lot. They get it, and they get behind it. And once they do stay interviews one round and they get to know people and they know what's on people's minds, they begin to feel, and this is the right word, empowered, that I can really make a difference with my team. So there's not a whole lot of people who fall by the wayside. It works.
Okay, and here's another question. How do you engage this protocol when the people you want to do stay interviews are the executives, the CEO, the COO, the CFO? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm assuming the implication is they're not going to want to do it. And if that's the case, here's what I would do. I would do one or both of these things. I would go to the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and I would say, "I'd like your help to engage in a turnover cost study." So keep in mind, one of the white papers is how do you put a cost on turnover. We also have something on our website on how do you put a cost on turnover. So I'd like you to help me. Would you engage in a cost of turnover with me and get the CFO on your side? That's option one. Option two is go to a unit manager of some function and say, "Could you and I do a pilot together?" And don't even ask your executives for support. Just go do it and go prove it. But pick somebody who is savvy and who your executives will listen to. That's how to work around them.
Okay, great stuff, Dick. That's going to have to be our last question because of the time. But thank you so much for delivering such an excellent presentation today, Dick. Thank you.
You're welcome, Dave.
Yep. So I also wanted to take a moment to thank Achievers for sponsoring today's event. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, everyone will receive a link to the archived version of the webinar, and there'll also be a PDF of the slides available. So you could access those at your leisure at www.hrexecutive.com. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope to see you again at a future HRE webinar. Have a great rest of your day.